So, good morning, sea lions, and today I'm going to read chapter 5 of Kensuke's Kingdom. Two parts, so this is part 1, so make sure you watch both parts before you answer the questions on today's lesson. So, chapter 5, I, Kensuke. He was diminutive, no taller than me, and as old a man as I had ever seen. He wore nothing but a pair of tattered breeches, bunched at the waist, and there was a large knife in his belt. He was thin, too, in places, under his arms, round his neck and his midriff. His copper-brown skin lay in folds about him, almost as if he had shrunk inside it. What little hair he had on his head and his chin was long and wispy and white. I could see at once that he was very agitated, his chin trembling, his heavily hooded eyes accusing and angry. "Damida! Damida!" he screeched at me. His whole body was shaking with fury. I backed away as he scuttled up the beach towards me, gesticulating wildly with his stick, and haranguing me as he came. Ancient and skeletal he may have been, but he was moving fast, running almost. "Damida! Damida!" I had no idea what he was saying. It sounded Chinese, or Japanese, maybe. I was about to turn and run when Stella, who strangely had not barked at him at all, suddenly left my side and went bounding off towards him. Her hackles were not up. She was not growling. To my astonishment, she greeted him like a long-lost friend. He was no more than a few feet away from me when he stopped. We stood looking at each other in silence for a few moments. He was leaning on his stick, trying to catch his breath. "American! American! American? I Caucasian? British?" "Yes," I said, relieved to have understood something at last. "English. I'm English." It seemed a struggle for him to get the words out. "No good. Fire. No good. You understand? No fire." He seemed less angry now. "But my mother, my father, they might see it. See the smoke." It was plain he didn't understand me, so I pointed out to sea by way of explanation. "Out there! They're out there! They'll see the fire! They'll come and fetch me!" Instantly he became aggressive again. "Damida!" he shrieked, waving his stick at me. "No fire!" I thought for a moment he was going to attack me, but he did not. Instead, he began to rake through the sand at my feet with his stick. He was drawing the outline of something, jabbering incomprehensibly all the time. It looked like some kind of a fruit at first, and not perhaps a peanut. Now I understand. It was a map of the island. When it was done, he fell on his knees beside it and piled up mounds of sand, one at each end, the two hills. Then, very deliberately, he etched out a straight line top to bottom, cutting the smaller end of the island off from the larger one. "You, boy, you here," he said, pointing back toward my cave at the end of the beach. "You," and he stabbed his finger in the mound of sand that was my hill. Then across the whole of the sand map he began to write something. The lettering was not letters at all, but symbols, all kinds of ticks and pyramids and crosses, and horizontal lines, and slashes and squiggles, and he wrote it all backwards, in columns, from right to left. He sat back on his haunches and tapped his chest. "Kensuke, I Kensuke, my island." And he brought his hand down sharply like a chopper, separating the island in two. "I Kensuke, here. You, boy, here." I was already in no doubt as to what he meant. Suddenly he was on his feet again, waving me away with his stick. "Go, boy! No fire! Damida! No fire! You understand?" I did not argue, but walked away at once. When, after a while, I dared to look back, he was kneeling down beside what was left of my fire and scooping still more sand onto it. Stella had stayed with him. I whistled for her. She came, but not at once. I could see she was reluctant to leave him. She was behaving very oddly. Stella Artois had never taken kindly to strangers, never. I felt disappointed in her, a bit betrayed even. When I next looked back, The fire was not smoking at all. It had been completely smothered, and the old man was nowhere to be seen. For the rest of that day, I stayed in my cave. For some reason, I felt safe there. I suppose I had already begun to think of it as a home, and no other. I felt as an orphan must feel, abandoned and alone in the world. I was frightened, I was angry, I was completely bewildered. I sat there trying to gather my thoughts, so far as I could tell. Though I couldn't be sure of it, there were only the two of us on this island, the old man and me. In which case, it stood to reason that only he could have left me the fish and the bananas and the water. Surely that had been an act of kindness, a sign of friendship, of welcome. And yet now this same man had banished me to one end of the island as if I was a leper, and had made it quite clear that he never wanted us to meet ever again, and all because I had lit a fire. None of it made any sense at all, unless he was out of his head and completely mad. I took a long hard look at my situation. I was marooned on an island in the middle of nowhere, very probably with a madman for company, and a bunch of howling monkeys, at least one orangutan amongst them, and God knows what else might be hidden in the forest, and millions of mosquitoes that would eat me alive every night. I knew only one thing: I had to get away. But how? How was I ever going to get off the island unless I could attract the attention of some passing ship? I could be here for the rest of my life. The thought did not bear dwelling. The thought didn't bear dwelling on. I wonder how long the old man had been on the island, and what might have brought him here in the first place. Who was he? And who was he anyway, to tell me what I could and could not do? And why had he put my fire out? I curled up in my cave, closed my eyes, and just wished myself back home, or back on the Pegasus with my mother and father. Such wonderful dreaming almost lulled me to sleep, but mosquitoes and the howling from the forest soon dragged me back to consciousness, to face once again all the appalling implications of my wretched predicament. Okay, so that is part 1 of chapter 5, Kensuke. There is going to be a part 2. I will upload that video separately, but they are both there ready for you to watch. Okay, watch both videos before you attempt to answer questions. Okay,